Welcome to the Managing the Smart Mind podcast with your host, Coach Kramer. This is episode 28, asking yourself the right questions. This is actually the first of a trilogy I'm doing on language, because how we talk to ourselves, how we talk about ourselves and the world has a massive impact on how we feel and perceive and experience life. In other words, language matters. It matters massively. And in this episode, we'll look at how to ask questions the right way. And the right way being, of course, a way that serves you. Now, as some of you already know, I studied analytical philosophy at King's College London many, many years ago. And one of my electives was philosophy of language, which, by the way, turns out to be an incredibly useful foundation for coaching. I did not suspect that at the time, but it was so much fun. And I mean, think about it. It's insane that language even works. That when you say, let's meet at the local library at 3 p.m., I have a pretty good idea what you mean. We both understand and agree upon what local library, meet, and 3 p.m. refer to, and what they mean combined like this. And maybe there's some innuendo there even that I understand or not. And it's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. But I will leave talking about the magic of language and meaning for a later episode, because today we're focusing on not on communicating, but on asking yourself questions. We're looking at that kind of inner monologue going on in your brain. Now, the way I look at the brain, the way I like to visualize it when it comes to asking questions is like a search engine, a bit like Google, but in the shape of a dog. You ask it a question and it will run out. It will go on a small quest, if you like. It will go fetch to find the answer for you. Now, what you may not realize is that whilst doing this, your brain assumes that what you state in your question is true and then sets out to prove it. And it makes sense, right? If it's not, why even bother looking for an answer? But now, think about all the questions we tend to ask ourselves throughout the day. I mean, the non-Googleable ones, not like, what is the meaning of that word, right? But questions like, why is this so hard? Why do I always leave it to the last minute? Why is it impossible for me to find a job I enjoy? Why is it so difficult for me to find friends? Why do I always drink more wine than I want to? Why can I never remember where I leave my stuff? Why do I suck at admin? Questions like these aren't helpful at all. In fact, they hurt you instead of helping you. If you ask, why is this so hard? Your brain will run off like a trusty dog. You can even picture the type of dog. And it will go find the evidence why the thing you're trying to do is so hard, which is the exact opposite of what you're trying to achieve. And when you ask questions like, why do I suck at admin? You reinforce that you suck. So when answering these types of questions, you may think you're problem solving, but you're actually problem perpetuating. They undermine your self-confidence and they disempower you. Okay. So does this mean questions you ask yourself are now banned? Are they outlawed? No, not at all. Asking yourself questions is an incredibly powerful tool to direct your mind, as long as you do it in the right way, right? To make it constructive. And the first step is to catch the bad, air quotes. You can't see them, but the not useful questions, the bad questions. You can, again, visualize these, maybe like evil gremlins. And you may have no idea what you're asking yourself throughout the day. Our internal chatter actually runs at the speed of 4,000 words a minute. I still find that very hard to believe, but it's a fact I got somewhere. And that would actually take an hour to say out loud. So There is a lot going on in that head of yours. And the better you get at catching your negative internal monologue, the easier it's going to be to modify it. So start noticing how you talk to yourself, what kind of questions you ask. You can also try using why ... as a prompt and write for 5 minutes to see what questions are lurking in the background of your mind. And then once you know the types of questions you're asking, the second step is to modify them into good questions. And there are several ways you can go about this. You can, of course, simply turn them around. You can go from, why is this so hard, to, why is this so easy? But doing it that way usually just elicits lots of sarcastic laughter from my smart mind. Like, ha, ha, ha. And it may be the same for you. Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. But if it doesn't work, to just turn it around. If it doesn't feel believable at all, you can find something less absolute and more believable. Like, instead of, why is this so easy? What could make this easier? And this sets your brain up to find some really useful ideas. And by the way, if the only answer you can come up with is, I don't know, don't worry. I'm going to cover that too in another episode on language. Let's look at, why is it so difficult for me to find friends? Now, I can turn that around to, why is it so easy for me to meet the most amazing people and befriend them? Again, brain is like, are you delusional? Right? But I can change it into, what steps can I take to start finding amazing friends? And within a split second, my brain just gives me ideas, because that's the way it works. It loves to serve. It loves to run out, find the answers, right? And you may have noticed we have got a bit of a pattern here. It's usually much more useful to ask what or how questions than why questions, unless you're philosophizing, of course. But if you want something to be useful in the moment, practically, you want to morph your why into what or how. So why do I suck at admin? For me becomes actually not, why am I so amazing at admin, or what can I do to get better at admin? Because that's another thing I can't really believe. But what I can ask is, how can I get help with my admin, right? How can I make it so easy, or at least doable, that I get it done? So as a guideline, you want to avoid two things when asking yourself questions like these. First of all, the negative bias, right? Why am I so bad at being on time? Very negative, reinforces that you suck at something. Don't do it. And the second one is using absolutes and generalizations, right? Saying, I always screw up. Nobody likes hanging out with me. Like, no, don't ever do that. Not useful. So why am I so exhausted after meetings could become, what specific things in meetings cost me a lot of energy, and what measures can I take to counteract those? So much more useful. And don't forget, you're in charge of this. So play with it a little. Make it fun. See yourself as a kind of word alchemist, making magic with meaning. Here's another example. Why do I always drink more wine than I want to? Can become something like, how can I make it a no-brainer to stop drinking after 2 glasses of white wine? Or how can I remember to say, 1 glass of champagne is the perfect amount of alcohol for me whenever someone offers me more? So I want you to go play with this. Find the quote-unquote bad questions, rewrite them into constructive ones, and ask those, and listen to the answers your smart mind is going to find for you, and then act upon them. You can even, it's kind of the next step, create a list of your favorite questions, like super useful questions. One of mine is, how is this so much fun? Especially when I'm creating and I get kind of stuck. It takes me straight out of perfectionism back into the joy of it. It's so good. So whenever you get stuck, that's one thing you can ask. How is this so much fun? Because listen, being alive, yes, Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it's hard, but it's also so good. Until the next podcast on language, mind your words. Bye-bye.